harder on that. But my topic today is using Twig with Drupal 7 and what that means and what you can do with it. But before we go to the topic, then a few words about me. So I'm the founder and CEO of Exove, a 70+ Drupal company here in Finland, Estonia, and in the UK. I'm also the chairman from Monday of the board of Drupal Finland and member of board of Drupal Estonia. I'm also global track chair for the DrupalCamp Amsterdam in the business track, and I have been coded from '84 onwards. And nowadays I code mostly in JavaScript and PHP. Started with BASIC, had a lot of C, Java, C++, Objective-C, whatever, and then ended up with JavaScript mostly. I'm father of 3 adorable kids also, besides coder. A few words about the company, and then we go to the topic. So we are one of the leading Northern European companies focusing on open source design and development. Our business is to help the customers to conduct better business on the internet. This is now our 9th year, so we have been operating from 2006. As said, over 70 people, and we have been serving more than 170 clients. We have 2 offices in Finland, one in Helsinki here, like half a kilometer that way, and then, and then other one in Oulu, that's that way, 600 kilometers, and one in Tallinn, 80 kilometers that way, and then London is probably somewhere there, and I don't have any clue to how far that is, but there we have the 4th office. And we have been financially stable from the very beginning. And yes, let's get down to dirty. So, some of you, hopefully all of you, at least few of you have been noticing that Twig 8 is coming to Drupal 8. Oh, sorry, Twig is coming to Drupal 8, and unfortunately Morten is not here because he would tell what that means for those that are not initiated yet. But it brings a lot of good stuff, modern stuff, to the probably one of the most hated part of the Drupal, and that's the templating. So it will completely change templating. Sorry if there's somebody that has been working with the current template engine, but I guess that's the sort of the hard fact. But it's not yet released. When I first started to talk about Drupal 8 release, that was in Chicago 2011. And then said yes, it will come next year in London, or something like that. And now it's 2 years past that day, the first release date I have ever heard. And there is still no release date. So, Drupal 8 is still a long way to come. And but if you would like to use all the niceness of Twig, then you actually are not out of options. Because there has been a couple of really good open source projects that have taken the Twig engine and made a JavaScript code of it. And now we are talking about JavaScript Twig engines only. So Twig.js is an independent JavaScript port of the PHP Twig template engine. It implements almost all, but not all. There's if you go to search for Twig.js in Google, you end up in GitHub page. There is a GitHub wiki page that shows that what is missing. It's not a long list, but there are still certain things that are missing. But most of the people in Drupal world have never done anything with Twig. So it doesn't matter because you have you don't have number of templates that you should change to Twig.js from Twig. And it can be extended. Of course, in the open source goodness is all about that you can participate. So if you think that something is missing, why don't you code it and make a pull request, and boom, then you have the one new feature for everybody. So here's the URL, by the way, github.com just on Twig.js. I'll tweet about these slides so you get them later. There's also other Twig JavaScript called Twig, but I have never used it, so I don't know whether it's better or worse. Twig.js has worked for me really well. but Twig might be even cooler, or it might be warmer. I don't know. So the make your own assumptions. It has a bit different way of dealing with the things internally. So there might be performance related things and so forth. I have implemented with Twig.js. I have used in a few projects. That one of those projects is Drupal based, and I have implemented several dozens of different templates, big ones, small ones, and everything in between. And I have never had a single issue with Twig.js not following Twig syntax. So I read always the Twig documentation from the Twig website and use that as a reference without an issue, even if it's written for the PHP Twig and I'm using Twig.js. So it's surprisingly good. Of course, your mileage might vary, so you need to think about or check it out yourself. So I said that I haven't had any issues with the syntax. I must also say that I have not used the most complex parts of Twig, like the blocks and these things, the inheritances and whatnot. So it might be that they are different, or it might be not. I don't know. I might know when I start to use them, but for the time being, it has been really good for me. It has excellent rendering speed. So it's at least for a human being with a couple of years old MacBook Air, it's instant. It just renders stuff really fast. It compiles the templates to JavaScript, sort of Unicode JavaScript, and then executing templates is really swift. Even with the quite big amount of data, so JSON documents with 40, 50, 80 kilos of stuff inside, so big trees that doesn't have, there are no images, they are just the object references. And the big thing that I have found out is here that I can regenerate part of the user interface on the fly instead of doing DOM manipulation. So if I have something that I'll show in demo that I have, there are 3 different lists that I need to inject the same information, but it's shown to different kind of to the user, and you can switch those to the tabs. I just render the tabs when the user changes tabs. They are always correct. I don't have to inject the stuff with the jQuery to, okay, table A, table B, table C, and then remove it from table A, table B, table C, and then I sort them table A, table B, table C, but I just instantly render them again, and they're always in correct shape because they reflect the data that I have, and I just change the data. It makes the JavaScript code way cleaner, that I don't need to hassle with the old DOM manipulation stuff, because that's ugly, that's long, and it's error prone. I just change the whole DOM, inject something new instead, and that's it. I have found out that it works well on desktop, pad, and mobile browsers. I've used in different scenarios, and there are no issues with Twig.js that the JavaScript implementations of the different browsers don't have any issues. So this said, how we can use this with Drupal. This talk is mostly about JavaScript part, not the Drupal part. There are several ways to integrate Twig.js to Drupal, but I have showed just one way of doing it. You can include JavaScript in different ways to the Drupal pages, so I guess that's something that you already know, and I don't talk that much about it. But we have 4 prerequisites or the sort of the process. We need to include somehow Twig.js to the page. We add the JavaScript that, okay, this page uses dynamic rendering, and we need to include the rendering library to actually be able to render. Then Twig is a template language, so we need to load the templates that Twig will compile and that we can use to render. then we need to have some data that we are going to render from somewhere, because it's pointless to have a template that renders without any data, because then you could just write that in a static HTML and be happy with it. And then the rendering that is resulted, the rendering string, needs to be injected back to the DOM tree that actually the user sees it. So that's the things that we need to do. In practice, it looks like this. So we have a Drupal here. It emits an HTML page. We see this is a page load. That page loads Twig.js library. Then we have I've called this Drupal 7 Twig.js. So we have other JavaScript file that I'll go briefly through that what it includes, snippets of it, that we need to load. And that code loads with certain conditions, certain instructions from this page. It loads something, some data from some object. It could be Drupal services API. It could be a MongoDB, if you dare to put a MongoDB unprotected for the JSON. It could be something else. It could be a Node.js system, a Django-based Python system, whatever. We don't care, because we get some data, preferably in JSON format. It could be something else. And then we load the Twig template. Now we have the data and template here. We generate the HTML snippet, and then we inject it back here, and then we run this process again and again based on the user interaction. So we get the sort of single page app kind of possibilities to the Drupal page without actually going back and forth here, because we remove the Drupal bootstrap for the subsequent views. Of course, if this is based on Drupal, then there will be a bootstrap here that takes time. But it could be some way faster system like Node.js that is instant compared to Drupal. And now we go to the JavaScript code and how the whole this goodness is to be made. So this is the D7 Twig.js file. So we have a function, JavaScript function we use to encapsulate this in the own namespace, that we don't have collisions. I don't go through that how this function is called. It's the normal Drupal JavaScript file template that you see how the Drupal what kind of JavaScript you should write to make sure that there are no namespace conflicts. Use that template and then start filling it out. And then we have a Drupal behavior that this one will be called by Drupal. I don't go into detail there, but it will have a D7 Twig object set by Drupal that will contain some configuration information. So this is the way the Drupal will give information to our library that where I am, for example, what is my address, what is the address of Drupal, or what is the authenticated user account, or what is the, for example, the real name of the user, or whatever. You decide. I don't know. I don't care what it's all about. It's up to the specific program. But this means that generating this, you need to make a Drupal module to connect to that. And I don't go to module code because it's just basic JavaScript sort of configurations and nothing else. This has been taken from a part of bigger context that I'll show later. That this is sort of stripped down version of all things that we have. So here, then we have the actual JavaScript class, and we have a few variables on that class or object. For example, loaded templates. We have a place where we can store the loaded templates that we know what has been loaded already, that we don't load it again and again and again and again. So it's a cache. We need to make sure that the class is initialized only once. We had the issue sometimes that the class was initialized twice. We had 2 Twig installations running, and it was complete mess. So just make sure that this is not really a singleton in a sense, but it's just when you call it, it will initialize itself only once, because there's a lot of initialization code later that takes time. So you don't want to read the templates again and again and again, but it's enough that you do it once. Because this might be called several times from different events when either by the user or by the page load when it's finished, it triggers
ready event, and then you start to do something for the page immediately.
So this is the for that class we use the D7 bridge is the settings object that we got from Drupal. So we store that for the later reference. And for example, if it's missing, that there's a bug in the Drupal code, that we don't get the configuration for that page that we are using the Twig, then we stop immediately. And this is just an example that we use. Check that the user account is set, that this is for the pages that the user should be logged in. So the code will be run only if the Drupal provides the settings and the settings contain certain data that we are interested in about. You could have any other setting checks there. It depends what you are going to do. And now we are getting to now we have initialized the class somehow, that we got it up and running. The beef is still missing, but let's play that it's initialized. You see the code later a bit. And then this is the same if clause that was in the previous slide. That if there is a mice cause ID, then we will launch a JavaScript function that will do something. For example, render some stuff, some dynamic stuff, instead of that placeholder. So the HTML that we generate in Drupal contains certain places that I want to have here a list of, for example, latest news. And then you inject that div ID latest news to those pages that you want, and then the Twig kicks off when it founds that, and then dynamic loads the latest news for that, for example. And here we have there's mice cause. This is related to this. What we have been doing is a golf-related system. So mice cause, my games, list of different things, and then it will call a JavaScript function that does something. But before we can actually get to that, we need to load templates from somewhere. And the problem with JavaScript in a dynamic system is that the JavaScript is somewhere in the Drupal tree. And you just add it and boom, it's there. But the JavaScript itself and the Drupal don't easily know their paths. You can dig them out. But the problem is that if you want to you need to load the templates with the Ajax, that you load the template one by one and you compile them. But you need to somehow make the Ajax get call. Okay, I would like to get the template. Yes, please, have a template. But where is the template? The JavaScript file does not know that. There's no way the JavaScript file itself knows where the templates are. So we have three options. We use static location. That's really bad idea, because then you can't deploy that system to a staging environment that easily anymore. Of course, the wise guy says that, okay, let's drop the host name. Yes, it's easier, but then if you have a developer machine that has a number of different locations for the Drupal installations that you're working on, with no virtual host set up, then it breaks down. Then you can't develop because no Twig template is found. Okay, the other one is that the Drupal says that, okay, the Twig templates are here. Cool. But that requires coding in Drupal, inside the Drupal. So we need to have a module that specifies that to the settings that, okay, templates are here. It might be good, especially if you have the template management inside Drupal. If you would build that kind of system, that Drupal also, that you can upload the Twig template through Drupal admin interfaces, then this would be really good. What I have found out that is for me the best one is that I find out the location of the script that I'm currently executing, and then use that as the base to load the template. So I'm loading them from the same directory or subdirectory, or then using dot notation to get somewhere else. But the templates in Drupal are in the same physical location as this file that I'm talking about. So that's one way of doing it. So when we load templates to our D7 Twig class, there's load template method that I say the name of the template, and it will load and compile it. And the first checks whether it's already loaded. Yes, okay, we have everything is done, here's the template. And this is for the case that you use the templates more than once. If you use every single template only once, then you might ask yourself the question, is there a point having this stuff done? Of course, if you use the templates in several different pages, then there is a point. But anyhow, I'll just check whether there is the template loaded. If not, then I have one variable that lists the templates that are available to me. They are not. I can't do directory searches to the place where the templates are, so I have them listed. And if the template ID matches the template name that I'm looking for, then I will generate the path for it, and then compile it, and then mark it that it's now loaded. I don't store. Notice that I don't store the loaded template. This compiles the template, but I don't get anything back that I would like to store, because the Twig knows based on the ID, because the template has certain syntax, that the template is there, so I can use that as a reference later. And as I mentioned, the calculating a script path, this is taken directly from now I lost the name of the place where you can get all the code snippets. So the answer. So this is not done by me, but it's that I'll go through the DOM. This is this big ugly hype, but I'll go through the whole document, find all the scripts, and then find out that which one matches my script name, and then that's the path. And then I can use that to read any other files next to that file. As mentioned, templates are defined so that there's the ID is the games, that's the reference that I use. Then there's the reference. So, for example, I use subdirectory Twig. So in my JavaScript directory in Drupal, there's a subdirectory Twig on the template section of Drupal JavaScript, and there I have all my Twig files. And the async is that the Twig needs to synchronously read the template, not return immediately, but it needs to return, compile the template before it gets back. And this is really needed in certain cases that the template, if the template is not ready, it can't be rendered. So it's better to load synchronously in my case. But that also depends. So we had the template loading, we have the script that kicks off on certain IDs, and then we need to have the template, the database shown, and the insertion point in the DOM. Those three things. We sort of have two now, that we have loaded template and we know that this ID is in the page, so probably that ID has something to do with the insertion point. It might or it might not, but that's something that the JavaScript code can decide. So the rendering is pretty simple. That we have the template name, we have the data, and then we have the jQuery ID that we use to insert the stuff in. We load the template that was shown a couple of slides earlier, and then this returns only when the template has been loaded and compiled, so it's synchronous call. And then we will get the HTML by calling Twig again with reference of template. So this returns a JavaScript or compiled JavaScript object that Twig has created from the template that has a method render that takes in the data and renders that data based on the instructions of the template. So I already got compiled code here, and then I just insert that to the insert point. That's basically it in a nutshell. Of course, we can change the theme a bit. That we can
append the stuff that we get, for example, new user. We add a user search something, then we add that to the list of things. For example, the recent searches list. I go there and search, and I search for user. I write Matti, click, then the recent search gets Matti appended, and so forth, so forth. So I can use these kind of things also. Just changing the jQuery method, or I can replace some stuff. So instead of inserting something inside or next to it, I'll just get rid of the whole stuff. The original ID disappears also with this one. Or I can render it to string and do some other manipulation for that HTML that I have created, and then insert it later, or concatenate those or whatever. This has been talked a bit, but we need to get the data. And the data there is a JavaScript object. And JavaScript object is really versatile thing. So it's up to you to figure out how you're going to create that. My choice, the typical choice is that you make a call to backend system and you get the JSON object back, and you evaluate that JSON object, and then boom, you have a JavaScript object. You could also publish JavaScript variables through Drupal, inline JavaScript, for example, and then have the objects there. The Drupal data structures are printed out as JavaScript code for rendering. Typically makes little sense, because you could just render them through Drupal templating. But sometimes it might be nice that there are some stuff, and you can also combine that. You get something from JSON calls, and then you get some data from Drupal, you combine it together and get something that actually is worthwhile rendering. When you do publish JavaScript variables, you need to make sure that they are in the same context as the class, or in the global context, because otherwise you can't access them because you have no reference whatsoever to them. You could also read the data from the page DOM. For example, that you generate something and you need, there's all the information about the users, for example, in the one listing that Drupal makes, but you don't want to do all the several different listings in the different tabs by Drupal. So you read the DOM and make the object out of that, and then use that to render the other views. The system doesn't care where you get the data as long as data is somehow valid JavaScript object. So this is the function, if you recall the ID, that if there's mice cause in the page, the ID mice cause found there, this one gets called, and then it gets a stats URL, creates this comes from, for example, from Drupal, that Drupal defines where is the service API located, and you can call there, have an API gets called, and then the user account. So you create a GET request. Okay, Drupal tells me where to call, I know what function to call, and then I provide some information about the user, for example, and then Drupal or the Node.js or whatever will bring me the code or the object. I'll get that one, call the function, I will pass the JSON that I get back, and if I have there's cause, this is important that every single time in JavaScript you just need to check these, because the whole execution of the file might die that if you end up in undefined. And then the user is in deep shit, because the JavaScript might be unfunctional. And then I just render it. But this is the template. This is the data that I got back from the GET request. And here's the ID that I want to inject the stuff into. So the Drupal has generated users calls div that is empty, instead of the table that you create with the Drupal template table API that is really horrific and really slow. Instead of that, you just launch the Twig template. A few notes of the code: that there are no error checks whatsoever. That the template does not exist, the code is malformed or whatnot. So this is something that you need to write in the JavaScript code yourself. You need to validate the code somehow. Or you can do a template that validates it. It's harder in Twig, but it's doable. So the error management could be also a template. The template says, okay, this is missing, So I'll show error message. But doing a lot of these checks inside Twig means actually so that because you don't have a good control flows there compared to JavaScript, you end up having a lot of same error messages. That if this is case, I need to show this and bail out. If not, then I'll continue. There's other check. I'll show this error message, same error message, and bail out and so forth. So it ends up really nasty in stuff in the JavaScript that just render error template and return, because in Twig you can't call return. You can't stop the template execution that easily. Or if somebody knows how to do it, then please tell me, because I've been working with these quite a lot. The template loading adds latency. So when every time I make a GET request, it's easily a couple hundred milliseconds of latency that gets done, especially if the user is not in the same country as my server. So if you are using only a couple of templates, you are using them all the time, you could just load them when the JavaScript file is initialized, because then the templates are loaded while everything else is loading too, and it sort of disappears in the noise. Because latency is latency of the network and not actually doing anything with your computer, so it's better that you do those loading as early as possible instead of waiting to the last minute. Or then you can load them in a single bunch. And that's what I do when I have like 40 templates that I need to use all of them in a single page app that I'll show later. I'll put them in one single file, I'll read that, I'll compile them all, and here's the code to do it. So this is template file. I've just figured out that I'll use text/x-twig-template as the type for that script. And then I have some ID, that's the HTML, and then in between here is the Twig template, Twig code. Plain text. So, the content here, the ID, and then this content type. And in compilation, I'll just get one template, I split it up with jQuery, and then I compile them one by one and store them. And then I have 40 templates with one GET request available for any use that I would like to have. So, little demo. Let's see how it goes. So, this is a golf game book. Is a system where you can play golf games while you are on the field. So, playing actual golf. You can input your scores by mobile phone, get the leaderboards and so forth. And this system that I'm showing is used, for example, when you create events that has 144 players. You don't do them one by one at the mobile phone. You would be having less fingers later, but just swiping and so forth. But instead we have this nifty system. This page is created by Drupal, and then the Twig.js takes over. Drupal gives the sort of the the frame for the page and nothing else. It makes sure that the user is authenticated and the account is open and not invalid and so forth, and the user has access to this game, that this is his game. But nothing else. Everything else is done in Twig.js. I don't go through all the things because there's a number of things. But just to show you that here we have 3 tabs: Rider Cup, Groups, and Players. So the Players is a tab that I can take players, I can sort them, and so forth. This is normal drag and drop jQuery, nothing fancy yet. But the Rider Cup teams, this is rendered. When I click the Twig renders, that other tab content is immediately replaced with the new stuff. And can you see when it happens? Click. So it's instant. There's not much there. There's like 100k of HTML or something like that on that part.
Is there something already without the Twig? Is there some HTML there that's modifying, or is it coming? Yeah, it's coming from. It's
coming completely from Twig. This part here. So this stuff is coming from Twig template. Yeah. One template. Yes. Same with players. So this player list was rendered immediately by Twig. And then certain things like that it can be sorted, needs to be checked with that when you create new HTML, you need to make sure that somehow the events stay. That's the sort of the downside of it. You can do it either so that you put the events on the like body element that never gets replaced, and then you use the jQuery identifiers to find out what is actual event, and then they stay, or then you re-instantiate the events every single time. It's up to you which way to go. And for example, if I have groups, I'll remove a couple of guys myself. I'm really bad golf player. I don't have a 0 as my handicap. I never played golf, so I don't know that much about it. But here we have the list. And now I add David back to the game. And then when I click that add button here, I've added also that it will render this again. So I didn't insert David somewhere here on the order of things, but it just rendered this stuff again. And same goes with the simple things that, for example, I can search here that Janne, how many Jannes we have here. We have 2 Jannes, that other one is called Artyom for some reason, but we have now 2 Jannes, and this one was rendered by Twig. Get rid of that, get Kalle, 1 Kalle already in game. How about Mikko? I know that there's a lot of Mikkos in Golf Game Book, boom, we have a few more. So this one makes a get request to Solar that returns the players, or it goes through the CodingNado API that connects to Solar. Solar provides the information, and then it renders here. And if I take the jQuery console, I guess that if we search for like Janne, then there is a post that for some reason complains, but it still works. Funny. Okay, then I don't show that one. There was a demo effect. Finally got to that place that I got the demo effect. And for example, if I go to groups and I remove all of them, yes, and then I create them, again, this one was rendered by Twig based on the data structure that the create button created for me, instead of that I would do any UI code, that whether there is something I need to put this and that and so forth, because these, how many slots you have, how many teams you have, is dependent on a lot of different variables inside the system. And what I have learned in this is that the golf is actually a pretty complex game. It's not enough that you just try to get the ball to the hole, but how you calculate the scores and how you play with the teams and so forth, it's sort of more than average engineer can comprehend easily. It's an English game at the end, so that's probably the reason. So as a recap, this system that I showed is unfortunately not a replacement to the Drupal template engine, but it's truly powerful way of making dynamic user interfaces without coding the interfaces in jQuery JavaScript that is ugly and burdensome, especially if you have the same stuff in different places, different kind of lists that the users need to do. So all the enterprise apps that you are working with Drupal would benefit hugely with this system. That you have the list and you generate them on the fly instead of rendering a page again and again. So because most of what you see, that the page that I shown you was like probably 1 or 2 megabytes on size, with all the data inside. But I have created single piece by piece with the Twig. And also, for example, the player there was the player, you see that has the name and the icon on the left. That is a Twig template that generates the players, and I use the same Twig template to insert them in the search results, or in my friend list, or in the groups, or in the player pool that was on the right, and so forth. So I use that same Twig template like 100 times on the page load, instead of doing the same code in different places of the page rendering, and then changing the player, adding some stuff there, change all these different places. So there is a performance boost to the server side that you process way less and you generate way less stuff on the line compared to the traditional way. And you could use this to separate user-specific content. That this is all the user-specific stuff is loaded with JSON and rendered on top of the page with Twig.js, and all the non-user stuff would come from the Drupal, so you'd cache that page. You should then need to have some way of reading the cookie or making authenticated requests to the Drupal to get the username. But that's other story, I don't go that through. But you would have the Drupal HTML be cacheable inside Drupal or inside Vanis that is outside Drupal. Have way faster speed to provide the page, and then it will be then gradually enhanced by Twig. And it's so much easier to make dynamic user interface with this system. If you have a fighting with the JavaScript to alter the DOM, that okay, I need to replace this, insert that one, and then change that one and remove these two classes. All that just throw it away and replace with Twig render, and boom, it suddenly magically starts to work. And that's the funny thing that I find most of my time when I do something new, I was like, whoa, it actually worked from the first try. Because it's way easier to make declarative code than procedural code. And that's one of the keys also. That's all that I got. Any questions, comments, anything? If not, then this was either really, yes.
First of all, thank you for interesting presentation. But it seems to me that Twig.js is not really suitable for Drupal, but can be used for all kinds of applications.
Yes, yes.
For example, we can have something similar with Bootstrap or Vue.js.
Yeah.
So, but the type of presentation is Twig.js or Twig with Drupal.
Mm.
So, what kind of version do you think Twig.js is more suitable for? If you want to deal with Drupal, is it 7 or Drupal 8?
It can be used both. With the Drupal 8, I have not used Drupal 8 at all, so my experience with using the Drupal 7, and it works there with these things that I wrote this handler stuff in less than a day, so it's not a complex thing to make it from scratch. So you just need to know what you are doing. With Drupal 8, I discussed this somewhat with Morden, but he didn't have enough information about the template engine internals. Because then you could also do that thing that the Twig templates inside Drupal, unless the template engine adds a lot of sort of stuff outside of the normal Twig system, you could read them from Drupal and compile inside the JavaScript and use them again, either render them in the server or on the fly, both ways. But the problem is that we don't work with Drupal 8 because it's not a commercially viable thing to do. All the things that we do are for customers, and they actually want a system that works and not that is bleeding edge yet. So we haven't worked with Drupal 8 that much. But it's at least theoretically possible that you could use the same Twig templates in both places, and that would be really awesome. Because then you could offload some stuff that, okay, instead of including something here in the Drupal 8 PHP Twig template, you could just inject some stuff and then later in JavaScript create the template and render that on the expense of the user computer and not your servers. But yeah, you are absolutely right that we could use this in different places.
Yeah, and that comes another question about if you're going to use this for Drupal 8, and it can may end up in situation that we have the same template files in different places. Because if we are using the relative path to Twig.js, but how if we have another template file which has the similar or maybe identical content, which is located at like different paths.
Yeah. Then I would make a Drupal module or through services get that template from the original Drupal location with the get. But then there's a question that you don't probably want to release all your templates as Twig.js templates, because some of the templates might contain information how the system is built, and then the malicious user could read all the templates and figure out holes in your system. So then you should have some kind of guardian module that says that these templates are allowed to be given out as the Twig template form and not the rendered HTML form. So I would do something like that in the middle and then throw my JavaScript loading from the same place away if there is a possibility to use the same templates. But if they are completely different, then it might be wise that you have the front-end templates and the back-end templates in different places. Any other questions?
What method do you recommend for creating the original container for the stuff? The HTML element. It's a static element, so I just in a Drupal template I just write div ID is something and that's it. And then if I need to have any ifs or whatnot, then that's normal Drupal templating. So there's nothing specific there but it can have information. We have, for example, cases that the Drupal creates an element that has a dropper inside, that it just shows that something is coming here, but it's coming later. And then that gets replaced by the Twig output. So we have this sort of, we generate in Drupal, we just generate that there's a placeholder and there's some placeholder stuff that doesn't take that long to write, but it shows the user that later something's coming here. So that could be one way. But there's no difference in creating that element compared to any other element in the HTML that the Drupal makes. Any other questions? If not, thank you for your attention. I'll tweet at Exo. There will be a link soon to the presentation at SlideShare. Thanks.